podcast. This is Arjun Nidigallu, and here we are with episode 3. We're thankful firstly to all your great feedback on the last episode, Inside a Musical Mind with the one and only Ganadhipan. So many of you have fallen in love with Gunnar and his music on the back of listening to that episode, so if you haven't listened to it yet, please do. In other news, we've just updated our homepage at atomicshift.org, so now if you're on a desktop, you can listen to our latest episode straight off of our homepage. You can also subscribe to our newsletter there, so you can be the first to hear about any of our updates. So check it out and let us know what you think. Today's episode is about a journey, and a pretty intense one at that. Pavan Raju is a young software engineer who wouldn't strike you as someone who is confrontational or aggressive or have any of those qualities you would stereotypically associate with a martial arts fighter. I've known Pavan for over 10 years now, and so when he told me that he enrolled into this program called Wimp to Warrior, I was definitely surprised, but also quite concerned actually. It is basically a 20-week intense schedule of mixed martial arts training that prepares you for a proper UFC-style cage fight. And if you've ever seen a UFC fight, you'd probably understand my concern for Pavan here. Perhaps it also arises from having been at the receiving end of my own share of brawls and fights back in school. So my view on fighting in general is that you only initiate a fight when you are not capable of conversing with words. It's not just ineffective, but also it's a destructive way of trying to resolve any argument. So sports like boxing and martial arts for me conjure up the images of violence and almost the sense of uncivilized behavior. But then when you think about the people you know who have actually trained in martial arts, and I happen to know a fair few of them surprisingly, it turns out very rarely are they the kind of people who would actually resort to any physical violence, and they almost certainly wouldn't start a fight. There's a stoic restraint these people show, and as someone who has never been trained in any sort of martial arts, this dissonance is something that I find quite fascinating. So in this episode, I air my concerns with Pavan, and he tries to convince me that the risks are worth the reward. We also talk about why Pavan took on this challenge in the first place, what the overall experience was like, and how he changed as a person at the end of those grueling 20 weeks. And while Pavan didn't quite manage to persuade me to take on the challenge myself, he does provide some great insight into the process and takes us on a bit of a journey. I must declare here that this is neither an endorsement of the Wimp to Warrior program, nor have we received any funds or have any affiliation with the organisation. This is just one person's experience, and if you are interested in the program, you should always consider all the risks involved. And with that little disclaimer, I present to you Pavan Raju. Pavan, thank you for joining us.
All good, man. Thanks for having me.
We've spent a lot of time talking about these things, especially the Wimp to Warrior program, but I purposefully didn't want to talk too much about it because I wanted to save the good juices for this podcast. So firstly, thank you for joining us. It's great to have you on. So for any listeners who haven't heard about Wimp to Warrior or yourself, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got involved with the program and you know what you do on a day-to-day basis as well, just to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I full-time day job, I guess we'll start there. I'm a software engineer, and that's what I do Monday to Friday. I slip in a bit of uni here and there. I might go to the gym.
So you're studying your masters now, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, nice. And that's part-time?
Yeah, that's right. It's usually like night classes or something like that.
Okay.
Cool. Keeps me busy, keeps me learning new things about my area, my field, so it's enjoyable. Yeah. And then, that's, and a bit of, working out and whatnot here and there where I can find time in a few times a week. And that's about it, just like everyone else.
Awesome. So what's not like everyone else is your involvement with this Wimp to Warrior program. So how did that come about? How did the idea come about?
There's a colleague of mine who did the program. In fact, he was doing it for the second time, and he was also mentoring the program. He'd done that a few times. And he just posted the idea out there, hey, you should look into this. And I'd seen him wearing the hoodie around work and whatnot before, so I was like, and it turns out, before he even told me to look into it, I did look into it about a year before. Okay. And then I went, it's too early for me in the mornings. And I was like, I'm not going to do it, whatever. But then when I looked into it the second time, I was like, what, I think I need this change in my life. I think I need to try something to kind of just push me outside my regular, like I said, my 9 to 5, my uni, and I'd kind of gotten stuck to that routine. So I thought, hey, let's give this a crack and see if that changes things up. And there were kind of other goals which I wanted to try and hit, and I was hoping that this would try and help me get there.
Yeah, I want to talk about those other goals actually, because that's actually what I'm really interested in. But first, for those people who don't know about Wimp to Warrior, could you give us a brief synopsis of what it's about?
Yeah, sure. So Wimp to Warrior is a 20-week MMA challenge. So it's everyday people. We go in, we train for just a bit over an hour and 15 minutes every morning. It's pretty early in the morning. Training for us started at 5:15 and went till about 6:30. Wow. And it's by design. It's just so that it's out of the way for all the other parts of your life. Right. So people should have no excuse not to be there at that time, because no one starts work that early in the morning. Let's be honest, or not a lot of people at least. Yeah. So they try and make it very accessible for everyone to get there. So which is why it's that early. So that whole program goes for 20 weeks, as I said, and at the end of the 20 weeks, you get into the cage and you have a proper MMA fight with someone else who also did the program.
Right, okay. So they'll match you up to someone who's a similar style or a similar ability to you, I'm guessing?
Yeah, that's right. So remember, the whole point of the program, the whole point of the program isn't just to come out as victorious at the end of the 20 weeks at your fight. Yeah. It's more about getting there.
And how many days per week would training go for?
So it was Monday to Friday.
Okay, so 5 continuous days of proper training.
Yep.
That's intense. So 20 weeks of that, and then at the end you get into a fight with someone.
Pretty much.
That is scary. Now look, I've seen your YouTube video of the fight. I was very nervous for you, and we're going to share that with our listeners as well, so everyone can see how real this is. It doesn't sink in till then. When you first told me you were doing this, I was like, oh yeah, cool. I thought of it more like a yoga class in the morning type thing, but when I saw that fight, it was intense. It's scary, isn't it? So I get your passion with improving your physical health, but in terms of making the decision to do something, put yourself in a position of vulnerability like you've done with this program, where do you think that stems from for you?
To be honest, I don't know. I've never thought about it. I think the best way for me to answer that is, growing up, I mean, every teenage boy, young adult is always gonna want to look like the next Arnold or be that superhero kind of figure in their own life, and it's natural. Everyone wants to be Superman or something, right? But so I think that's where a lot of people start training, either to get bigger, get stronger, to look good, to look better, and whatnot. And when I started Wimp to Warrior, it was about those goals. One was, hey, I want to get into good shape, I want to look good, and as a result, I will also feel good. But it was more the other way around. I started to feel better before I started to look better. It's just naturally, because you enjoy the process. You end up enjoying the process a lot more than the actual result. Even before Wimp to Warrior, sure, I was doing a bit of strength training and whatnot, and we played hours of ping pong. Yeah. Over the years, and
I can vouch for with my body shape, the ping pong doesn't help your body as much as you think it would. Why MMA though? You can achieve a lot of these goals you just described in terms of feeling good, looking good, and all those things. You can achieve that in other ways, but why MMA?
Well, it doesn't have to be MMA though. It can be anything. Like you said, it can be CrossFit. It can be strength training. It can.
No, but as in, why did you choose MMA? What was attractive about it for you?
Yeah, well, it was laid out in front of me. Hey, there is this program that runs for 5 months. Yeah. It's MMA, and it's there. They look after you in terms of what training you need to do. So the barrier to entry was low. Straight away, and they said, hey, we'll give you the equipment you need. Sure, you gotta pay a bit, but hey, look, there is the equipment and there is the coaching. So straight away, lowering that barrier to entry into MMA, I think Wimp to Warrior has done a good job at that. Right. Okay. And so, hey, I could have done something else, but hey, this was there. I've seen the results of this. And
Yeah, because
from
your
my colleague.
your colleague's gone through this process. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was there. So I said, hey, let's give that a crack.
Yeah. So inspiration and merchandising has done its job in terms of getting you into the program.
Yeah.
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 So take me through a typical training session. What was it like? Just take me through and explain to us as visually as possible what it's like.
Okay. So it was Monday to Friday, as I said, really early in the mornings. The first 10 weeks was really about getting everyone's foundations right. And so those foundations include people's fitness levels. So bringing it to a baseline before we actually start sparring in the second 10 weeks. So the first 10 weeks is all about, let's get everyone's fitness up to a certain level, and let's get the foundations of how to actually throw a punch, how to actually do a couple of combinations, how to actually throw a kick. And let's make sure we're doing that the right way. So come the second 10 weeks, where we actually do more physically intense things, it's not a brawl.
Right, okay.
Because it's not just a brawl. MMA is not a brawl.
It looks like it.
It can look like it,
yeah.
But as you start watching it a bit more and more, it's not a brawl. But those first 10 weeks. So in terms of the Monday to Friday schedule, Mondays and Wednesdays were our kickboxing more type lessons. Very foundational stuff for the first 10 weeks. Making sure we were throwing the right punches the right way, we had the right form, the right technique. The best part of the Mondays and Wednesdays were with the kickboxing. The warm-ups used to be more intense than my workouts before that I used to do by myself in the gym. And so 15 minutes in, it's 5:30, we're 15 minutes in, and you're like, are we done yet? And the worst part of it is, when you look up at the clock and there's an hour to go, and it's like, damn it, there's still an hour to go. So that's what we did Monday and Wednesdays. Tuesdays were our fitness in the park sessions for the first 10 weeks. So imagine this, here at the park at 5. Remember, I started this in July, so it's winter. And there was still 1.5 months of winter at that time. So we're in the park, the grass is wet, and we're doing sprints. And then we're doing weights and whatnot in the park. It's freezing, and a couple of people vomiting here and there, and you're sprinting, and that's what we were doing. Sprints and weights, and very CrossFit style almost. So that was our Tuesdays, really getting our fitness up. And Thursdays was jiu-jitsu. And that is an awesome sport, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I absolutely suck at it, but it's so much fun. And Fridays was conditioning. Conditioning is all about getting our cardiovascular fitness and health up. It's where we just did the same exercises but over and over and over and over, just trying to make sure that can we do a sprawl when somebody tries to do a takedown on you. A sprawl is when if somebody tries to do a takedown and try and tackle you, you just kind of put your body weight onto them and you fall to the ground. But doing that under physical duress over and over. So if I were to put into a quote that I came across the other day, doing this kind of repetitions for over and over and over, I think Matt Fraser, the CrossFit guy, says it well. Don't do something until you get it right. Keep doing it until there's no way that you can get it wrong. And so that's the mentality that they were trying to drill into us on this Fridays. Doing it with perfect form, even if you're slower than everyone else doing it, but just don't stop, but just keep going. So that's what Fridays was all about.
So that's 20 weeks worth of that before you get into a ring or a box. What do you guys call it?
We call it a cage.
A cage.
Octagon.
Octagon. Yes. So when you're in that cage, what does it feel like to face off with someone and you know this person is trying to hurt you but is also just trying to win the game? I mean, what's the psychology like there?
With Wimp to Warrior, there's a lot of love going into these fights. Because I trained with this person for 20 weeks. He's my brother. We trained with each other. We've opened up to each other as friends. But we both have a duty. At that time, we go in, we give it our best. And that's what it's all about. The coaches are with us, alongside of us the whole way. But once we're in the cage, it's just me and him. Yeah, and everyone becomes a coach when you're in the ring. Like all the spectators are yelling out their own little kind of instructions and whatnot, and some of them you just have to shut out. But yeah, it's an exhilarating feeling being in there.
Yeah, and you had your friends and family. Did you have any family in the crowd?
My dad and my brother came actually, so I had a family, yeah.
Oh, good. And how did they feel about the whole thing?
They were like,
yeah,
we'll come along.
But sounds like they had a lot of fun based on the video.
Yeah, I think they did have a lot of fun in the end. Well, my friends did.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It was insane. Yeah, but my dad doesn't show a lot of emotion around this stuff. It's hard to tell, if he had fun or not.
Right, okay. How did the family feel about you taking on this program?
Our families are quite traditional still. Fighting and all that stuff, for them, it's keep that in the movies and for other people to do. It's not what we do.
Yeah.
You can't be promoting violence. That's what one of my uncles said. But people need to also remember it's a sport. At the end of every UFC match, there is a hug or a kiss on the forehead or something. But yeah, it took them a while to understand that hey, it's sport. It's just a sport. Like, you respect who you're fighting, and on the way out, win or lose, you have to respect the decision, what's happened. And not everyone can understand that. And that's okay, because I do, and my family closest to me do. And my friends do, and you could see that because they came and supported me.
Yeah, look, I do want to delve more into the whole violence aspect of the sport. But before we get there, were you made aware of the risks to the training as to what it is that you will be putting yourself up against, and how you can manage those risks?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, there's always the form where you go, so and so, the organization is not responsible if you die or you get injured and whatnot. But yeah, so that's why this first 10 weeks is so important in Wimp to Warrior, because it sets the foundations, and any program, like an accelerated program like this, will make sure that people are well trained enough and they know the risks going in, and they do things with the utmost form and technique, so you don't end up hurting each other, especially at training, because you don't want to hurt your teammates.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we're doing something wrong, the coach just yelled at, hey, everyone stop, don't do it this way, so and so injuries can happen and whatnot. And they do make it clear. Multiple times throughout. We had people who did drop out due to injuries, but that's just unlucky. Things happen.
Yeah, and I think every sport has its associated risks, and I suppose we make up our minds as to what risk is worth taking and what's not, and that's subjective completely. So, what are some of the biggest myths people have about this sport or this program in general, and were you proven wrong about any of your myths before you walked in?
To be honest, I didn't go in with too much in my mind about it. Yeah, people do go, oh yeah, it's, you could get absolutely bashed and at the end of your fight, or you can come out, not in good shape, you can get injured and whatnot. And it's true. Like you said, it's about every sport. But if you're injured, it doesn't mean you stop the sport per se. It's a case by case thing. But you can, take a break for a week or two. They teach us how we can, remediate some of these injuries. How do we work through the injuries? Right. If you want to be doing any sport for 20 years, like even as recreationally, you're going to get injured. But with the myths and whatnot, I didn't go in with too much in my mind. I just need to do it. You can't just overanalyze. There's always the whole paralysis by analysis and thinking about all these myths and truths and facts, but just do it, and then you can always bail if it's not for you. But you won't know until you give it a red hot crack, like an honest red hot crack.
What do you think has changed in your life now as the aftermath of this 20-week program? What's different about you now?
One is the confidence thing. Doesn't matter what you do, but if you do it in front of 100 people where you make yourself vulnerable, we end up coming out a lot braver. Like bravery and vulnerability goes hand in hand. I learned that from Brene Brown, actually, one of her awesome videos that she put up. Yeah, but making yourself vulnerable in front of so many people where things can go wrong, that helps you put things into perspective. Perspective is another thing I got out of this. I mean, like, sure, you have an important thing to do at work, like a presentation or something. You kind of go, hey, hold on, like, I put myself on the line in front of hundreds of people. How hard is it to do it in front of 10 people? So that's one thing I got out of it, like that kind of courage to do that sort of stuff. Another thing was just a mindset around nutrition. Like, in one of my blog posts, I said that you should treat your body like a balance book, almost, of the stuff they eat and the exercise that you do. So the days that I know that I'm going to exercise, I allow myself to eat a bit more on those days. And the days that I don't, then I don't eat as much, or I'm just a lot more conscious about what goes in. So like dieting with like counting your macros and all this stuff, I wasn't doing it perfectly, but it still set the mindset for me to carry on with the rest of my life by looking out for things like that.
Right. So now you have a different diet than you did before. Is that the case, or you've just become more aware of what's going into your body?
Awareness.
Yeah.
One big thing. And the other, it's I don't have a strict diet per se, but you build up good habits. So habits is the most important thing. Like, in fact, the right habits is what was the biggest thing that I took out of this.
That's awesome. What you said about vulnerability is 100% true. And I love the fact that one of the best outcomes from you out of this is your blog. I know you started the blog slightly before this program, but you really started pushing your posts with a lot more confidence, and I can tell by reading your posts that you're happy to have the world see your views. You're not sitting there tweaking it to make people accept you. You're just saying, this is what I think. Tell us about your blog. What is that about, and how'd you get there?
Yeah, so initially the idea of the blog actually started out to share my experiences. So I used to write a couple of things on Medium every now and then, and that was just to kind of share my opinions and views. And then I kind of like dropped off the habit of, let's be honest, I never really had the habit of posting things. It was just a few one-off things that I did. Last year I went to a tech conference in Austin, or it's not a tech conference, a big music festival / tech, gaming, whatnot. It's called South by Southwest. It's a big festival. And you run into a lot of smart people who have like also write blogs, and they gave really good examples of where blogging can help you in their career and whatnot. And there was also a way that I saw was like, hey, this is how I can share my views with the world, or I can give back to the world somehow, because you can give so much to people through your experiences. So that was another reason why I started. But then again, I felt like, what do I have to share with the world? Do you know what I mean?
As in, what do you have to share that's valuable, or what do I have to share that's interesting? Because they're different questions, right?
Yeah, you're right, actually. What's valuable? And you don't know what's valuable to the world unless you actually put something out there. Yeah. And so at the end of Victoria, I was like, you know what? And even throughout it, like, I was like, I'm learning all this stuff. I need to put it down, because I know there are so many other people who haven't done this program, who would benefit from the things that I've learned. And so that's why I put it out there. If I'm wrong, then, like, with my thoughts and whatever, then that's fine. That's why there's a comment section. You can disagree with me, and that's fine. If you want to learn more, you can have a chat with me. But yeah, it was all about to share what I've learned. It may not work for everyone, and that's fine. You could find a better way, like something that's 10 times more effective than on what I did. But the stuff that I've shared, that right. Works for me.
That's it. No, look, I think that's really important, because all too often we shy away from sharing something because we assume that it's not interesting enough, or it's not valuable enough. But like you say, value is really a product of experiments, right? With the increasing social media garbage that we see all the time now, people are so focused on what's interesting. It's almost not even a second question as to say, is this actually valuable? Is this actually something that people can use?
Yeah.
So it's great to see, and I really appreciate blog posts, because that comes from a place of value. That comes from a place of someone like yourself saying, this is my experience, and I believe this is valuable, and that's powerful, right? As opposed to Twitter and the social media abuse that we see these days. It's myself included. We do waste a lot of time reading this stuff that adds no value to us. It's just interesting. It gives us that little bit of a high in that moment, and then it doesn't mean anything afterwards.
A lot of the stuff that we see makes us feel worse nowadays.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
And that hit me personally as well. You're scrolling through Instagram, and then you go, oh, how awesome is their life? How awesome is their life? How awesome is their life?
That's right.
And it's all people that you know. So it's that going, I don't feel like I'm good enough. I don't think the stuff in my life is worth sharing.
That's right.
Because it's not as valuable as the stuff that they're sharing. And that got me down really badly for a while. But who cares? Like, eventually you kind of go, they're only sharing the good shit in their life.
That's true.
That's why. And nobody shares the bad shit.
That's right.
or the embarrassing stuff. So, yeah.
And what you say is absolutely true. I mean, people are always putting up where they see themselves in their best moments, right? And when I'm producing these podcasts, or if I'm having conversations, and I ask myself, how do I attribute value? How do I measure if some idea or some thought or some conversation is actually valuable? I found that the best way to measure that is by imagining what it would be like without that conversation or that idea. So really try and put yourself in a world where that idea will not exist, right? We talked about this in our podcast with Gunnar, with music, right? Music as a concept, if it did not exist in our lives, how much meaning would we lose? And the amount of meaning we lose is directly proportional to the amount of value we should attribute to that thing, right? If you look at it that way, 99% of the posts I see on Instagram or Facebook, for that matter, attributes to garbage. And that's why I think people like yourselves who've gone through these meaningful experiences, like the Wimp Warrior program, which I have a lot of respect for, because I can't see myself waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to training 5 to 6:30 every day for 5 days in a week for 20 weeks, and then end up fighting someone in the Octagon in front of family and friends, and show that level of vulnerability. I see value there because I think if it did exist in my life, it would add a lot of meaning. And you could probably see it from your perspective, saying if that experience was taken out of your life, then you would lose meaning. So it's a great, interesting philosophical conversation. But we should get back on topic.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the sport in general, UFC. MMC as a martial art in itself. You got a viewership now in the hundreds of millions, right? There's big money. What do you think are the real, social impacts of this sport? And like your uncle mentioned, are you really promoting violence? Are you actually, as a sport or a follower, or even an actual fighter, are you propagating a violent environment? What do you think?
In my opinion, no. And that's because the sport itself, mixed martial arts, is giving people a stage. If they want to be violent, they can be. But anyone who's done MMA knows it's not about violence. Like, you watch a UFC game, like, people don't go in to kill each other. People can tap out whenever they want to. If they've had enough, they can tap out. It's done. The ref calls it. If they can't defend themselves, the ref calls it. But people go in to prove that they are the better fighter than the other person. And that's what it's about. And anyone who's done mixed martial arts would know that, at least in my perspective and the people that I've spoken to, that it makes you almost less violent. Because it gives whatever the stuff that you learnt, the tools and things in your war chest, it's responsibility. You can't go around just putting people in the streets into an armbar or something, because it's power and it's responsibility. You can't just go ahead and do that, because you know the damage it can do.
Right.
That's the most important bit. Like, can you imagine a rugby player randomly tackling someone in the streets? They don't see a soccer player go around and slide tackling someone at the park or something. It's the same with this sport. You're not going to see these people throwing punches. I mean, it's happened here and there.
But it's independent of the sport, you say. It's more what they do in their lives for various other reasons.
Yeah.
Look, I can vouch for that because I know a handful of people in my life who have practiced martial arts of some sort to a degree that's respectable. And all these people, ironically, are the calmest, most sane people you'll meet. They would never even think about throwing a punch in a fight. They're the kind of people that would walk away if they could, right? So where do you think this dissonance comes from? Is it, like you say, is it because they know the impact it can cause, or they just have the confidence to not have to get involved? Is that what it is?
Yeah, well, you have the confidence. That's one thing. Well, the worst thing that you can do, suppose you're going to get mugged or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the confidence to kind of say, hey, I can make this go whichever way I want.
Yeah, okay.
But in terms of actually why people are less violent is because they have a place where they can show the violence, or it's not really violence, but they can relieve that stress to want to punch something in the gym. And that's honestly it. And you're humbled in the gym. People will put you into like weird positions in jiu-jitsu at least. And that's happened to me in the gym. Like in like 10 seconds, someone, or even less than that, we started standing up and they've just landed onto my chest and they're punching my face in. And that's happened to me. So you kind of go, oh, it does bring down your ego a bit.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go around, randomly.
I agree.
People
and I think a healthy dose of humiliation is good in any case. So.
Oh yeah, of course.
In most walks of life, I think the best decisions get made after a series of past sour experiences, right? So.
Yeah.
That's well put. Now, bigger picture, when you're talking about these types of sports, boxing and sports that involve quite a bit of head contact, there's more mounting scientific evidence to suggest long-term injury issues with players, especially in the outbreak of the NFL game and things that are happening in America in this space. Do you ever feel like that's a risk? Are you continuing with this sport to see that as a risk, or what's your take on it?
I mean, first point is it's up to the individual. Like, you need to know the risks, and you need to continually be made aware of the risks because your circumstance changes. Like, at every knockout, at every head injury, it does get progressively worse. And we see that, like you said, in the NFL, or whether it's rugby or any contact sport. So you need to be continually made of the risk and your situation and your health. You need to have people around you who can support you on this and whatnot. My uncle, the same uncle actually, he was like, hey, you do know, like, you're risking head injury and whatnot. And I was like, yeah, I know, but you only live life once, man. Like, you don't want to end up at the end of your life like in pristine condition. Like, when it's time to go, you want to be able, oh yeah, I lived. And sure, if you've got a few less brain cells than the guy next to you, then oh well, it's time to go anyway.
Isn't it fascinating how that term could be used on both sides of the argument? You only live once, right? You can say you only live once, so let's take the risk.
Exactly.
And someone else could say you only live once, so don't take the risk, right? It works in both ways. But it's interesting what you mentioned about being aware, and I suppose being aware makes it a consensual decision from yourself and your opponent to accept the risks that are being taken. I suppose the moral dilemma that it poses is, at what point do we make it morally equitable, right? So what I mean is, I think as a society, we're very convenient to attribute morals where we feel that it's okay. Within the space of the Octagon, we're okay for two grown men to beat each other up, or two grown women to beat each other up, but we will not allow it on the street, right? So I think, yes, there's lots of differences between the two scenarios, but there is definitely a dissonance in our moral authority. I knew you were going into this program. My concern for you as a mate was really, I hope he doesn't get hurt, right? That was my first instinct. And it's really, for someone looking from the outside in, it looks like there's so many other ways to achieve what he's achieving in there, right? But for you, you're the only one who knows, what is special about this particular path that gives me what I want that no other path can offer me, or no other path I know can offer me. So is there any specific, unique outcome that you get from this program or this sport that you think you can't get anywhere else?
I don't think I've tried enough of other things to comment on that, because I've never tried CrossFit in my life. But the intense kind of training sessions they put each other through, you can get very similar results, minus punching each other in the face and putting each other into arm bars and whatnot. Yeah, I can't honestly answer that because haven't done an array. I've only done cricket, a bit of ping pong with you in your backyard, and sure, a bit of MMA, swimming and whatnot. But you did say something earlier about injuries, right? Because you were worried about me getting injured, and funnily enough, a lot of people, and rightfully so, were worried about that problem as well. But things heal. Get over it. Like, it heals. Like, any wound will heal. Like, the physical ones, luckily, or in most cases from sports, the physical ones heal a lot faster than the mental ones. And so what's the worst that can happen? Like, if you break your leg, that will heal.
So you're talking about training here in particular?
I'm talking about a fight.
A fight as well?
And training. Yeah. Just in general, fight or training.
Of course, a lot worse can happen in a fight, though. I mean, there have been instances where people have concussed to the point where they can't return to normal life. I mean, there are bigger risks than that.
That would happen over years and years. I strongly doubt. I might not be 100% correct on this, probably not, but I'm sure they've been doing it for a long time. Sure. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But were they aware of the risks? Maybe, probably, I would say. But they did it anyway. A lot of the people who have never tried the sport were wondering, hey, should I do this because of potential injuries and whatnot? I'd say just do it. If you're on the fence, do it. Why don't you just go to one lesson? Yeah. See how that changes you. And then you can decide. If you're on the fence then you should do it. Right. Don't go in thinking about, these are the injuries that could happen. They probably will. A lot of them will happen. It's the sport.
Now look, I'm really glad you've done it, because definitely see a difference in your confidence, but also your blog, what you've done with that, because I know that's been on your mind for a long time, and you're finally putting up content that you're very free and proud of, which is really good to see.
It's me. It's more me.
It's like, more you.
I write book reviews now because I like writing more. I like reading now as well, and I want to become a writer one day if I can. If I could do anything in the world, then I would just read, write, and teach, or something like that, So, and if I want to become a writer, the best thing you can do is just write frequently. Exactly. That's what I see the blog as a way to just write.
I think we both share that passion, writing, so it's always a good one. Going forward, are you going to get more involved in this sport?
I need to, in terms of like time, not in the immediate next few months. I had to sacrifice a few things when I took up Wimp. I had to put uni on the side and kind of take a break from that. So I have some debt to pay there in terms of time.
Yeah.
But I definitely see myself doing jiu-jitsu in the future. It's a great sport.
And it's interesting because a lot of people who do these sports tend to be the same level-headed individuals that you wouldn't expect to be involved in a violent activity. You know what I mean? So, look, I just wanted to say that I've got immense respect for you and the work that you do, but this has been an incredible journey, and I'm so glad that you've kept me in the loop with all of it. I feel like I've gone to some of these sessions even though I haven't, because of your input and your descriptions. And I'd like to encourage people who are listening to really look into this, because this is not a paid advertisement or a promotion for this program whatsoever. But when someone sees value in something, that's you almost have to advertise. You almost have an obligation to advertise the value. So, from my point of view, this is something if you're looking to make a big change in your diet, a big change in your physical well-being, and you're interested in pushing the boundaries, this is something that I would highly recommend. Yeah, based on Pavan's experience, not my own.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to that, like the diet and the nutrition and the training, all that stuff is stuff that people saw on the outside, and that's easy to show because you can take photos of how I look before and after. I think one of my blog posts has that. You can't take photos of the way that it's changed you on the inside as a person. Like, even now, I wake up between 5 to 5:30, like this morning. Like, and I want to use that time to do something useful for myself, because I did that for 5 months. I can't not do it now. That 5 months, it taught me how to sleep better. I do that now. Like, if I go to bed a bit later, then my alarm's going to be set at 5:30 as opposed to 5. It changes you. Like, my discipline is different. And a lot of programs can offer you this as well, but this is different, I have to say. I'm not getting paid for this either, to talk about Wimp Warrior in this way.
We should, I think. I really think we should.
But it does change your wiring.
Yeah, it does.
I know people who have walked out of there and during the program, they actually quit their job to start their own business.
Wow. So it gives you the courage to do the things that you've put on the back burner for a while.
It gives you perspective.
Yeah.
For me, it was the blog. I speak my mind a lot more now as a result. Like, I could before as well, but now I just...
Less filters.
Exactly.
I like that. Now, look, thank you so much, Pavan, for joining us today. It's been a really good conversation about your program and about your journey, really. There's lots for our listeners and for myself to learn and be inspired by. So would you like to tell us about your blog and where they can find it?
Yep, www.pavanraju.com.
That's where we'll find you, and that's where we'll find all your awesome work. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Hope your listeners get something out of this.
I'm sure they will.